Hello, this is part 4 of John Masefield's The Box of Delights. Kay put the little box under his pillow and was soon asleep again. He dreamed of wolves padding on the snow after the Punch and Judy man. At 6 o'clock he woke again and heard the bells chiming for the hour. What with the moonlight and the snow blink, there was light enough in the room for him to see the box with its old, worn, shiny shagreen cover and magic knob upon it. "He said I must go out towards the camp at dawn with Peter," he muttered. "I must do that." He waited for another 20 minutes and then called to Peter. "I say, Peter, wake up. Let's go out and explore." "Explore what?" Peter growled. "What do you expect to find? Mushrooms, may I ask?" "Oh, don't come if you'd rather not," Kay said, "but it's always rather fun being out in the fresh snow and seeing all the animal tracks." "But to get up before it's light on the first day of the holidays, I think it's the purple pim," Peter said. "Oh, get up, Peter," Kay said. "We can forage in the larder. We can get heavenly breakfast foraging in the larder, then a real breakfast when we come in." "All right," Peter said. So up they got. They went down into the larder and got themselves ham and bread, which they spread with blobs of butter. Then each had a big mince pie and a long drink from a cream pan. Before they set out together, Kay looked at the little black box in his inner pocket. "I won't examine this till I come back," he thought, "when I can be sure of being alone. Now we must hurry to see what comes to him, if it isn't all an absurd dream." They went out into the white world of the snow and took the road to Arthur's camp. Nobody was about yet. A few upper windows showed lights, a few chimneys smoked. The way looked very different from what it had when he had ridden it at midnight. The buildings were back in their places and the lakes of water were gone. But by the shortcuts it is only 20 minutes' walk to Arthur's camp. At the camp, the wood, with its yew trees, was again in its place. All bracken and brambles were prone under the snow. There was no close cover left. There were also no wolf tracks in the snow under the ramparts where the wolves had run. There were many rabbit tracks. Now that it was beginning to be light, the boys found some fox tracks and a tiny neat imprint of what they judged to be rats' feet. Kay was soon at the very place where he had stood within the stockade when the fires had burned and the beasts had stampeded. That was the place, with Ox Hill dead in front and Broad Barrow or Gibbet Hill square to the right, and the bearings prove it. Where the old man had spoken to him must have been a little to the left. 3 great yew trees grew there, now close together, all very old. Kay moved towards them in the space between them, which must have been the spot where the old man had given him the box. Someone had scuffled aside the snow and had camped for the night, wrapped in a woven stuff which had imprinted its texture on the snow. It must have been a coarse woman. The strange thing was that no footprints led to the place, although footprints led away from it. "Someone's been here for the night," Peter said. "Look out for creepy crawlies." "No footprints to show where he came from," Kay said. "He must have come before the snow," Peter said. "Let's follow to see where he goes. What a night to have been out in." "Snow's said to be warm if you really get into it," Kay said. "But I dare say that's one of the things they say." They followed the footprints, which were those of a man about the size of Cole Hawlings. "But I don't think it can be Cole," Kay thought, "because there are no tracks of a Barney dog, and he must have had Barney with him. But them rats said that the lady was going to take the dog. Of course, she has him. The tracks led on over the camp wall, across the ditch, and presently out of the wood, onto the bleak upland known as Bottler's Down. There are some spinneys on the shoulders of the Bottlers. The tracks led past these, going due west. As the boys came over one of the shoulders past a spinny edge, they sighted their quarry 200 yards ahead, a little old man, trudging the snow bent under a green baize-covered bale. He was near the spinney called Rider's Wood. At that instant 4 men darted out of Rider's Wood and ran at the old man, who dropped his bundle. One of the men had something that flew up. Kay gasped, as he thought it was a club, but it seemed to be a sack or bag, which came down over the old man's head. A second man in the same instant lashed rope around the old man's arms and legs. In 5 seconds they had the old man trussed up and lifted. 3 of them hurried with him to the other side of the spinney. The fourth man followed with the bundle. The boys were too startled to cry out or to do anything. They stood spellbound. There came the roar of an engine from beyond Rider's Wood. "That's an aeroplane," Kay said. They heard confused noises and the slamming to of a door. The roaring of the engine became much louder, and an aeroplane lurched into sight past the covert end, going across the snow to take off into the wind. "You'll stick in the snow," Kay said, "and then they'll have to leave him." However, it didn't stick in the snow. It lifted after a short run, and at once lifted higher and higher with great lolloping leaps. Now that it was in the air, it was silent, of a grey colour and swifter in going and climbing than any he had seen. It had almost no wings and was in the clouds in no time, going northwest, Kay judged. "Well, they scrobbled the old man," Peter said. "Come along, Peter," Kay said. "We must go to see what tracks these people have left." "I say," Peter said, "I am glad I came out with you. I never thought I should see a gang scrobble an old man and carry him off in an aeroplane." "It's very lucky," Kay said, "that we've got the snow. All the tracks will be clear as print. Don't let's run, and keep well to the side of the old man's track so as not to obscure them. And let's get it absolutely clear so that we can tell the police. 2 men in white ran out, then 2 others, and there must have been another man in the aeroplane." "There were 4 who did the attack," Peter said, "and the first one, who had a bag, was the tallest of the 4, and they'd all got something over their faces." They came to the scene of the kidnapping, and then went into the copse to see where the gangsters had lain in wait. They had been in the spinney some little time and had scuffled out their tracks. They had been resting in a yew clump among some tumbled stones clear of the snow. They had not smoked during their wait. There were no cigarette ends, no matches, no tobacco ash. They had scuffled out their foot tracks from the plane, but of course the tracks to the aeroplane were plain. All that they could see was that there were 4 men of different sizes, one a good deal bigger than the other 3, and that all were wearing new rubber goloshes or rubber boots. The track of the aeroplane told the boys nothing. It had run on its wheels to a level strip near the spinney on a part of the down kept clear of snow by the wind. "Well, that's that," Kay said. "They've got him, and they've got away with him, and I'm pretty sure it was our Punching Judy man." "It jolly well looked like him," Peter said. "Well, we'd better go back and tell the police." They made a last examination where the aeroplane had rested, but there were no clues but a few spots of black oil. They took the shortcuts home and called at the police station. The big red-faced inspector was an old friend of Kay's. He understood rabbits and was a clever amateur conjurer. Kay had always thought there was a lot of sense in him. Kay told his story. Peter backed him up. "Ah, indeed," the inspector said. "That was those young officers from the aerodrome having a bit of a frolic." "It wasn't like a frolic," Kay said, and Peter said, and they weren't in uniform, and it wasn't a government aeroplane. And then, Kay said, it was such a lonely place and such a time in the morning. And what were you doing in that lonely place at that time in the morning, Master Kay? The inspector said. I hope you young gentlemen weren't trespassing in pursuit of game. No, of course we weren't. We were out looking at the tracks of the animals in the snow. Ah, the inspector said. Now, did this old man struggle at all or cry out? He didn't have a chance to, he said. Did he see you? Or did the other people see you? No, they couldn't, he said, from where they were. And did you shout or try to raise an alarm? The inspector asked. I'm afraid we didn't, he said. We were just spellbound, and it all happened in an instant. They ran out, scrubbed him up, put him into the aeroplane, and away they went. Well, the inspector said, it sounds like the aerodrome to me. Those young fellows, Master Kay, serving their country and away from the civilising influence of their mothers, just full of spirits, the spit of what I was myself when I was a young man. It was a Christmas gamble and a bit of what you call ragging. And you see, Master Archer, the law isn't like ordinary things. Sometimes the law has to put its foot down. Sometimes it has to shut its eyes. And the law, Master Kay, makes much of what is called motive. What's prank when meant as prank may become felony when meant as felony. And what you saw seems to me to be no more than prank. But all the same, I am obliged to you, Master Archer. We in the law are always glad of evidence, first-hand evidence, from one who knows what's what. I'll keep my eyes and ears open, Master Kay, for anything out Butler's Down way. But nothing's come in yet. No job for the law has been done out Butler's Down way. But we in the law keep our eyes open as well as our ears. I'll ask what aeroplanes were out that way this morning. And you were a matter of 200 yards from the scene of this fracas, the inspector said. And you didn't recognise any of the parties? Well, Kay said, we both think and are almost sure that the man was the Punch and Judy man who was at Seeking's house last night from 5:30 to 6:30. He was stopping yesterday at the Drop of Dew Inn, and his name was Cole Hollins or Cole Hawkins. At this moment the telephone bell rang. The inspector lifted the receiver. Yes, he said. Condicote 7000. What is it? Someone talked to him for a minute or two. Now that, the inspector said, putting down the receiver, that's what we call in the law a coincidence. That was our officer at Tarchester asking about your Punch and Judy man. Cole Hollins or Hollins? The man is at Tarchester now and the police are asking, is he a fit kind of man to give a public performance at the Bishop's Palace this very night as ever is? And he's at Tarchester now? Kay asked. Yes, the inspector said. At the police station, showing his licence. You heard me asked, is he all right? They said yes. You heard me asked, does he make any complaints? They said no. So, if he was the man you saw, Master Archer, he can't be much the worse, even if they did put him in an aeroplane. Now, Is he, Master Harker, a kind of man to perform before a bishop and other holy men? He's simply wonderful, Kay said. The inspector took up the receiver and spoke again. I have every reason to suppose, he said, from information received that the man is a good performer and can be trusted not to disappoint nor yet to shock the company. By the way, is the man there? He listened, and then said, just bring him to the telephone. There's a young gentleman would like to know something. Hello? Hello, is that Mr. Orlins? Are you any the worse for being in the aeroplane? No, he says, none the worse, sir. Mr. Orlins, who was it put you in the aeroplane? He says some young friends with more fun than sense. And what brought you out what was down way in the snow, Mr. Orlins? He says it was the only flat bit where he could meet the aeroplane. Now, he's a young friend wants to ask how you are. The inspector handed over the receiver to Kay. Is that you, Mr. Hollings? Kay asked. I rang you up to ask how you are, if you're any the worse for the wolves or the aeroplane. The telephone was full of crackles and buzzes. A female voice said, Poynton 25, please. A distant man's voice said, give up the strychnine and go on with the belladonna. And then from far away an old man's voice says, no, none the worse, I thank you. All the better. Are you... Are you really Mr. Hollings? Kay asked. That found my ticket and was scrabbled into the aeroplane? Really? Truly he, the voice answered. And you're the young gentleman? Yes, Kay said. Goodbye, young master, the voice said. Kay hung up the receiver. So that's that, the inspector said. That's how science helps the law. You thought your friend was scrabbled. Now by science and the law you hear from his own lips that all is well. Somehow Kate wondered if all was well. The telephone was working badly, and the voice was like the old man's voice, but still, somehow, he felt uneasy. I'm very glad, Kay said, that the man is safe. Please forgive us for taking up so much of your time. A public man's time is the public's, the inspector said. It's my duty as a public man to listen at all and sundry at all times. Sometimes the law has to shut his eyes. Sometimes there isn't enough for the law to go upon. Sometimes the law intervenes. But at all times I say that the law in, Master Harker. Any tale that's first-hand evidence, you bring it to the law, and depend upon it, Master Harker. Murder will out. However dark the deed, Master Kay, we bloodhounds of the law, as they call us, will bring it out into the limelight. Kay thanked him again, and then they talked for a moment of brighter topics, rabbits, simple conjuring tricks, blue Persian cats, the Condicote rugby team, etc. Then they both shook hands with the inspector and wished him a very happy Christmas and New Year, and then they went home to breakfast, for which they were a little late. Just before they clambered over the garden fence of Seekings, a puff of air came upon Kay's face, which made him look up at the sky. It had been bright, clearing weather at dawn. Now it was clouding over from the west on a muggy, windless air. A weeping thaw had set in. As he entered the house there came the slip and splosh of snow dropping from the roofs. "There's a thaw," he said. "We shan't get very far with that snowman we were going to build." Before he went to breakfast, Kay tried to telephone Caroline Louisa. To ask how her brother was. Unfortunately, the line was out of order owing to the snow. They said that the men were doing their best, but couldn't promise anything. They hoped to have the line ready during the day. The post had not come. That, however, was due to Christmas, not to the snow. All through the breakfast, the snow fell from the roofs and trees, slither, slither, splash. When they went into the field to set about their snowman, they found that the snow was rapidly becoming too slushy. They were soon working in slush. "We'd better stop," Jemima said. "We shall be wet through. He'll never look up to much." "We'll give him a sort of head," Kay said. They did this. Maria topped it with an old top hat that had lost its crown. Susan put in some dark stones for the eyes, and Peter added a clay pipe, and they flung some splotchy snowballs at him. Ellen called to them from the door. "If you please, you're not to get wet through," she said. Oh, by the way, Ellen," Kay shouted, "have you had any telephone messages?" "No, the telephone isn't working," Ellen said. "Are they doing their best?" Peter called. "Oh, Miss Susan," Ellen said, "you are naughty to go get yourself wet through like this. And you, Miss Jemima, Miss Maria, your things will be ruined." "Jolly good job," Maria said. "No, Miss Maria," Ellen said, "it isn't a good job, and you know that it isn't, and you ought not to say such things. To be wet through in the cold is the way to take your death. Come along now, like a good little girl. Come along in now, no nonsense, you must change all your things." She shepherded the girls to the door, and then remembered the boys. "And you, Master Kay, are wet through too," she said. "Oh, come on, Peter," Kay said. "Let's get out of this. There's too much discipline here altogether." They slipped over the fence in spite of Ellen's calls. What shall we do now?" Peter said. "Shall we go out again to Arthur's camp?" "But you've been there once this morning." "I know, but I don't think we've heard the last of that aeroplane. I can't help thinking that we shall find out some more or hear some more if we go out, and we might try tracking the foxes down. It's only a mile." "Well, all right," Peter said. Though the thaw was now streaming, they found their own tracks and those of the little old man. Besides these were the tracks of 2 other men. "You see, 2 men have been here since we were here," Kay said, "and they're not countrymen, for they didn't wear nailed boots." "One of them was smoking a cigarette," Peter said. "See the ash? That's the cigarette butt. Egyptian." "What on earth have they been doing here, sweeping the snow aside?" Kay said. "I wonder why they've done that." "Oh," Peter said, "these bird enthusiasts are always doing things like that, to let birds get at the worms." "That's a bright idea," Kay said, and went on noticing that here and there the snow had been carefully swept aside. As they were now trackers on a trail, they went cautiously. When they came in sight of the spot where the old man had been set upon, they saw 2 men sweeping the snow with a sort of hard handbrush. "Keep under cover, Peter," Kay said. "There are your bird enthusiasts. The plot thickens. I see it all. They squabbled that old man, thinking that he had got something which they wanted. They released the old man when they found he hadn't got it. Now they think that he's dropped it in the snow and they are looking for it. They won't find it in this slush, I'll bet. What do you think? What do you make of the two men? They look like two curates to me, Peter said. They're the two who were in the train with me yesterday. And I've a very shrewd suspicion that they picked my pocket. You think that their curate's clothes are a disguise? Yes. Golly, said Peter. Well, let's watch. Presently, the two men wearied of their search and decided that it was no good searching longer. They went off down the hill. With some little trouble, the boys followed, unobserved as they hoped. The two curates went downhill to the road, where a big, dark, shabby car was waiting for them. They got into the car and drove off. They went, as Kay noticed, in a northwesterly direction. Presently, as he chanced to look in that direction, he saw some bright moving speck in the sky, which he judged to be an aeroplane. I wonder, he thought to himself, if that motor car could turn into an aeroplane. I wonder what it was, Peter said. I wonder what it was that the men were hoping to find. Kay knew very well what it was that they were hoping to find, but he did not feel that he had a right to say. Oh, these gangs, he said airily. They always try to get each other's codes and passwords. I shouldn't think they'd bother about those, Peter said. They could always torture a prisoner till he told them all the passwords. I should think they were rival gangs of jewel thieves after the same diamond necklace. And one of the gangs has got it and is trying to get it out of the country, and the other gang is trying to wane it. That's an idea, Kay said. He was afraid that that might be the explanation. When I get in, he thought, I will hide and look at this box. If it is a diamond necklace, I'll take it straight to the police inspector. They went home. Now, at last, Kay felt that he was free to look at the box of delights. He went up to his bedroom. He was very anxious not to be spied upon, and remembering how those three spies had been peering in at the window the night before, and how the repulsive rat had crept about in the secret passages, finding out all sorts of things, he was not sure that he could guard himself from being seen. His bedroom had two doors in it, opening onto different landings. He locked both doors and hung cats over the keyholes. He looked under the beds. Then, as in the past when he had wished to hide from his governess, he crept under the valance of his dressing table. No one could possibly see him now. The box was of some very hard wood of a dense grain. It had been covered with shagreen, but the shagreen was black with age, and sometimes worn away so as to show the wood beneath. Both wood and shagreen had been polished until they were as smooth as a polished metal. On the side of it there was a little countersunk groove, in the midst of which was a knob. I press this to open, he repeated. If I push to the right, I can go small, whatever that may mean. If I push to the left, I can go swift, and that I've tried. I do want to see what's inside it. I wonder, is this wood that it's made of lignum vitae wood? It's the wood the phoenix builds in, the box said. Is it really? Kay said. No wonder it smells like spice. Then he saw the groove was inlaid with gold, and that the golden knob around within the groove had been had been carven into the image of a rosebud, which was extraordinarily fragrant. I say, Kay said to himself, this is a wonderful box. Now, I'll open it. He pressed the tiny golden rosebud, and at once, from within the box, there came a tiny crying of birds. As he listened, he heard the stock-dove brooding, the cuckoo tolling, blackbirds, thrushes, and nightingales singing. Then the faraway cock crowed thrice, and the box slowly opened. Inside he saw what he took to be a book, the leaves of which were all chased and worked with multitudinous figures, and the effect that it gave him was that of staring into an opening in the wood. It was lit from within. Multitudinous tiny things were shifting there. Then he saw that the things which were falling were the petals of May blossom from giant hawthorn trees covered with flowers. The hawthorns stood on each side of the entrance to the forest, which was dark from the great trees, yet dappled with light. Now, as he looked into it, he saw deer glide with alert ears, and then a fox motionless at his earth, a rabbit moving to new pasture and nibbling at a dandelion, and the snouts of the moles breaking the wet earth. All the forest was full of life. All the birds were singing, insects were humming, dragonflies darting, butterflies wavering and settling. It was so clear that he could see the flies on the leaves brushing their heads and wings with their legs. It's all alive, and it's full of summer. There are all the birds singing. There is a linnet, bullfinch, a robin. There's a little wren. Others were singing too, different kinds of tits. The woodpecker was drilling, the chiff-chaff repeating his name, the yellowhammer and the garden warbler were singing, and overhead, as the bird went swiftly past, came the sad, laughing cry of the curlew. While he gazed into the heart of summer and listened to the murmur of the singing, he heard another noise like the tinkling of bells. As he wondered what these bells could be, he decided that they were not bells, but a tinkling, like the cry of many little long-tailed tits together. Where did I hear that noise before quite recently? Kay said to himself. It was not the noise of long-tailed tits. It was the noise of little chains chinking. He remembered that strange rider who had passed him in the street the day before. That rider who seemed to have little silver chains dangling from his wrists, which had jingled so. Oh, Kay said, and he looked. There's someone wonderful coming. At first he thought that the figure was one of those giant red deer, long since extinct. It bore enormous antlers, and then he saw that it was a great man, antlered at the brow, dressed in deerskin and moving with the silent, slow grace of a stag. And although he was like a stag, he was hung about with little silver chains and bells. Kay knew at once that this was Herne the hunter, of whom he had often heard. Ah, Kay, Herne the hunter said, are you coming into my wild wood? Yes, if you please, sir, Kay said. Herne stretched out his hand. Kay took it, and at once he was glad that he had taken it, for there he was in the forest, between the two hawthorn trees, with the petals of the May blossom falling on him. All the May blossoms that fell were talking to him, and he was aware of what all the creatures of the forest were saying to each other, what the birds were singing, and what it was the flowers and trees were thinking. And he realized that the forest went on and on forever. And all of it was full of life beyond anything that he had ever imagined. For in the trees, in each leaf, and on every twig and in every inch of soil there were ants, grubs, worms, tiny little moving things, incredibly small, yet all thrilling with life. "Oh dear," Kay said. "I shall never know 100th part of all the things there are to know." "You will if you stay with me," the hunter said. "Would you like to be a stag with me in the wild wood?" Now, next to being a jockey, Kay had longed to be a young stag. Now he realised that he had become one. He was there in the green wood beside a giant stag, so screened with the boughs that were a part of a dappled pattern of light and shade, and the news of the wood came to him in scents upon the wind. Presently the giant stag gave a signal. They moved off out of the green wood into a rolling grassland, where some fox cubs were playing with a vixen. They passed these and presently came down to a pool where some more hens were cocking about in the water. A crested grebe kept a fierce eye upon them. They went out into the water. It was lovely, Kay thought, to feel the water cool upon the feet after running, and to be able to go paddling, though it had been winter only a minute before. And it's lovely too, he thought, to have hard feet and not get sharp bits of twigs into one's soles. They moved through the water towards some reeds. Looking through the stalks of the reeds, Kay saw there were a multitude of wild duck. "Would you like to be a wild duck, Kay?" Herne asked. Now, next to being a jockey and a stag, Kay had longed to be a wild duck. And at once, with a great clatter of feathers, the wild duck rose more and more and more, going high up, and oh joy! Herne and Kay were with them, flying on wings of their own, and Kay could just see that his neck was glinting green. There was the pool, blue as a piece of sky below them, and the sky above brighter than he had ever seen it. They flew higher and higher in great sweeps, and presently they saw the sea like the dark blue on a map. Then he made a sweeping circle, and there was the pool once more, blue like the sky. "Now for the plunge!" Herne cried, and instantly they were surging down swiftly and still more swiftly, and the pool was rushing up at them, and they all went skimming into it with a long, scuttering, rippling splash, and there they all were, paddling together, happy to be in the water again. "How beautiful the water is," Kay said. Indeed it was beautiful, clear hill water, with little fish darting this way and that, and the weeds waving, and sometimes he saw that the waving weeds were really fish. "Would you like to be a fish, Kay?" Herne asked. And next to being a jockey, a stag, and a wild duck, Kay had always longed to be a fish. And then instantly Kay was a fish. He and Herne were there in the coolness and dimness, wavering as the water wavered, and feeling a cold gurgling up just underneath them, and tickling their tummies. While Kay was enjoying the water, Herne asked, "Did you see the wolves in the wood?" "No," Kay said. "Well, they were there," Herne said. "That was why I moved. Did you see the hawks in the air?" "No," Kay said. "Well, they were there," Herne said. "And that was why I plunged. And did you see the pike in the weeds?" "No," Kay said. "He is there," Herne said. "Look!" Looking ahead up the stream, Kay saw a darkness of weeds wavering in the water, and presently a part of the darkness wavered into a shape, with eyes that gleamed and hooky teeth that showed. Kay saw that the eyes were fixed upon himself, and suddenly the dark shadow leaped swiftly forward with a swirl of water. But Kay and Herne were out of the water. They were trotting happily together over the grass towards the forest. Herne, a giant figure with the antlers of the red stag, and himself a little figure, with his little budding antlers. And so they went trotting together into the forest, to a great ruined oak tree, so old that all within was hollow. There were great shells still put forth twigs and leaves. Somehow the figure of Herne, which had been so stag-like, became like the oak tree, and merged into the oak tree till Kay could see nothing but the tree. What had been Herne's antlers were now a few old branches, and what had seemed silver chains dangling from Herne's wrists were now the leaves rustling. Then the oak tree faded and grew smaller till it was a dark point in a sunny glade. This glade shrank, and there was Kay standing between the two hawthorn trees, which were shedding their blossoms upon him. Then these shrank till they were as tiny as the works of a watch, and then Kay was himself again under the valance, in his room at Seekings, looking at the first page in the Book of Delights contained within the box. "My goodness," Kay said. "No wonder the old man treasured this box and called it a box of delights. Now, I wonder," he said, "how long I have been in that fairyland with Herne the Hunter." He looked at his watch and found that he had been away only 2 minutes. It was now 10 minutes to 11. "My goodness," Kay said, "all that took only 2 minutes." And that was the end of chapter 4.